Hello and welcome to Football League World TV. This is the Middlesbrough Fan Takeover Show. My name is Sam Rourke, the Chief Editor of footballleagueworld.co.uk. I am delighted to be joined by Dana Malt of the Boro Breakdown podcast. Dana, how are we this afternoon?
I'm not too bad. The sun is shining, so I can't complain. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. We've got lots to discuss on this show. Middlesbrough fans, if you are watching this show on whatever platform, Facebook, Twitter or YouTube, please do get involved in the comments. We want to hear your opinions on Neil Warnock's Middlesbrough side. Let's get straight into it. So, Dana, let's rewind to before the season kicked off. Let's touch on last season a little bit. 10th place finish in the end for Middlesbrough. An encouraging start to the season. It looked like you were kind of on the verge of a playoff push, but it did dwindle out during the latter end of the campaign. I mean, what were your expectations heading into this campaign for Boro?
Well, I expected an improvement on last season. I mean, when you've got Neil Warnock in charge and obviously the promotion record that he has in this division, you expect a top six finish, really. And I mean, last season it did peter out into nothingness, really. It was a massive shame. I remember a game against Bournemouth, which was essentially the game that would have opened the door to the top six or closed it on us, and we capitulated down at the Vitality, and then it was basically we were playing for nothing. But I think I said on our podcast a 7th place finish this season, which I mean, I expected us to start this season strongly and then sort of peter out as we did last campaign. But obviously the start that we've had, 2 wins and 8, it's not been great. But I think 7th place finish is kind of optimistic at the moment because I just can't see us putting a run together.
Absolutely. I mean, what have you made of the start of the season so far? You touched on the fact that, it's been 2 wins, 3 draws and 3 losses so far. You find yourself down in 15th position right now. I mean, it's been an unspectacular start, hasn't it, to be frank, from a Boro persuasion. What have you made to the start of the season? Are there any kind of issues you feel that have played a role in this kind of slow start?
Yeah, it has been poor. I can't really pinpoint an exact reason as to why it's been poor because I think there's problems all over the pitch, really. I mean, for once, the attacking side of things isn't the worst part of it, whereas in previous seasons, we've really struggled to score goals. But it's not really been that this season. I think defensively, we've lost that. We used to be resolute, I think, under Neil Warnock, and now it seems as though we're just so porous. There's so many holes. It's easy to play against us, I think, is probably the best way to say it. And the man marking system's just been, I mean, it really is. We're struggling with it, I think, is probably the best thing to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have struggled with injuries defensively so far this campaign, haven't you? The likes of Dyke, Steele, Boller, Paddy McNair and Darnell Fisher haven't been available for different periods of the season. Do you think that's had a bit of a part to play in this slow start?
Yeah, potentially, but I feel like it's a bit of a cheap excuse, really, because especially in regards to our fullback problems, I mean, we had Lee Peltier playing on the left, the right-footed Lee Peltier playing on the left, and then Marcus Tavernier had to play on the right against Blackpool, and I mean, that's incredibly problematic because Marcus Tavernier is, in my opinion, our best player, but we've had all summer to bring in a left back and we just haven't managed to do that, so that's really disappointing. Yeah, you could say injuries because I think Anthony Dyke still is now out for a substantial amount of time with a hamstring injury, so he's a really important player for us. But as I mentioned, I feel like it's too cheap to say that the injuries have had a massive problem because there's issues in areas where we haven't had many injuries because I feel like it comes down to the way that we set up.
Absolutely. Right, let's touch on that game last time out against Blackpool next. It was a disappointing afternoon for Boro at the Riverside last time out against Blackpool. 1-0 up through Marcus Tavernier, but Blackpool pegged them back to win the game 2-1. I mean, it's a disappointing result, isn't it? Especially against a team that, in comparison to Boro, probably have different ambitions for this season. Did you come away from that game disappointed, concerned at all?
Yeah, I came away quite annoyed actually because there were a few people that I saw say that the first half performance was good. I mean, our expectations must have dropped considerably if we thought that first half performance was good. I mean, there's a lot of sort of promising attacking pieces of play where Onel Hernandez, for example, down down the flank, he's getting past his man, but there's no point in that if you're not going to beat the first man on the cross. So it's the end product that, I mean, I mentioned earlier, it's funny I mentioned earlier about the attacking issues not being as problematic as others, but you can't really say that a first half performance in which there's so many nearly moments is a good one. I thought we petered out after we scored. I mean, we scored in the 8th minute, and then the second half performance was woeful. And Boro do have problems at home in the second half. I think if you look at the home half-time table, we're in the top 2, and then if the games were to start and finish in the second half, Boro would be in the bottom 4. So that is an issue. And again, I know I keep mentioning the man marking, but I absolutely hate it. I think it just makes us so easy to target. And I think any team that is coming up against us, if you've got a player with pace and good off the ball movement, then you're pretty much going to get chances against us.
Yeah, very bad afternoon for Boro at the Riverside on the weekend. Right, let's touch on a few of your new signings next. Let's start off with Uche Ikpeazu, arrived from Wickham over the summer, a player that Warnock had been tracking for a considerable amount of time, back from when he was playing at Hearts up in Scotland. Dana, what have you made of Uche's start to life at Boro? It seems of late, Andras Sporar has been the man that Warnock's opted to utilise up top. But what have you made of Ikpeazu's early start to life at Boro?
I think he's been good. I think he's been an upgrade on Britta Sombalonga from last season, because I think there's key attributes that he's much better at in terms of holding the ball up, sort of trapping the ball, bringing others into play. He's not a target man per se, but I suppose it's subjective on what you define as a target man. For me, it's all about those aerial battles in which Uche Ikpeazu isn't particularly strong at, and I think the stats back that. But he's been a threat, and to be fair, I mean, in terms of sort of his technical ability, he's not all that bad apart from his first touch, because there's been a few times where he sort of span around his marker and got shots off. I think at Wickham he did the same against us at Adams Park, and I think he scored a really good goal against Bournemouth in which he did that. So he's been fantastic. The only thing with Uche is that he can't last 90 minutes. He's yet to finish a game, so that's something that I think is, we've probably brought Sporar in with that in mind. But I mean, whether or not he'll be our starting striker from here on in with Sporar at the club, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I mean, he does seem like a good option to have up top in terms of his physical capabilities and what he can do to opposition defences. You know, he's very strong on the ball. He's pretty good at holding the ball up and bringing other people into play. Is it a concern, the amount of goals he scores? Because you look at his record over the last few years, it hasn't been spectacular. Is that, I guess, a bit of a negative with him, the fact that, you know, he isn't necessarily very prolific?
Perfect Boro striker. That's how I see it. But yeah, of course. I mean, I think I said about Uche that he'll get into double figures. I didn't expect that to be 15, 16 goals a season. 10 will do for me. I think 10, to be honest, is our 20 at Boro. We don't have strikers that score a lot of goals. But as long as he could chip in with a few, I mean, his starting place is under question at the moment. I think with Sporar, as I mentioned, so he might not be our sort of go-to striker this season. But I think I spoke to a Wickham fan when we signed him, and he said that if it wasn't for injuries last season, he might have actually got more, probably actually should have got more goals for them. So there's definite promise in Uche Ikpeazu, but it goes back to, can he last the full game? And at the moment, we've seen that he can't.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's touch on Andras Sporar next. Signed on a season-long loan deal from Sporting Lisbon in Portugal. Sporar has played in the last few games for Boro, scored his first goal away at the City Ground, a superb finish into the top of the corner of the net. Dana, what have you made of Sporar's start? I guess it's only been a few games. You can't judge him too in-depth just yet, but does he look like someone that could score the goals for Boro this term?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, he offers us something completely different to Uche Ikpeazu. Obviously, like we've mentioned, Uche has the physicality. He's going to be a physical test for centre halves, but Sporar has movement that I haven't seen from a Boro striker since probably Patrick Bamford back in the playoff season under Aitor Karanka. And that's really exciting because, you know, with that movement in behind and off the ball, it triggers passes. And the only problem that I have with that is Neil Warnock's style of play, because it is very much just sort of lump the ball forward into the channels, Matt Crooks get on the end of it and then win those second balls. But if we can get a combination going between Marcus Tavernier and Andres Sporar, then that could be a really good potent sort of threat to the championship, because as you mentioned, that finish against Forest was emphatic. It was probably the pure definition of that word. And if we can give him that service, I have no doubts that he can get a few goals for us this season. I think the deal to bring him to the club includes a obligation if he gets 15 goals a season and gets us into the playoffs or gets us into the Premier League or something like that. So I mean, it's optimistic because, as I've mentioned, we don't typically have the best of luck with strikers, but he's got all the attributes to be a goal scorer. It's just that we need to give him the service.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you regard Sporar now as your main striker, your starting striker week in, week out over Uche?
I would say so, yes, because I think he's a better player than Nick Payero, but they're two completely different options in fairness. I mean, Sporar has started the last two games. Uche didn't start the game before that against Blackburn because he was ill. But I would probably say, Sporar is probably the starting striker for us now.
Yeah, Middlesbrough fans, if you are watching this show, get your comments in. Let us know what you've made of Andras Sporar's start to life at the Riverside Stadium. Let's touch on another summer signing in Matt Crooks next. He's been fairly heavily involved for Neil Warnock's side so far, Matt Crooks, often playing just off the striker in that kind of number 10 role. What have you made of Crooks, Dana? Is he someone that you could see kind of, you know, taking that goal-scoring burden upon his shoulders and scoring the goals for Boro?
Yeah, definitely. And he, again, is another upgrade. I think George Saville last season got 6 goals. Matt Crooks is already on his way to matching that or even exceeding that. And the thing with Crooks is he's very good at winning those aerial balls, which I think he's pretty much the centerpiece of the Neil Warnock style of play, because he's very good in the air at bringing those balls down and bringing others into play. But he's also got good feet for a big man. I think his nickname is the Tree, but technically he's pretty good as well. And I mean, he's got off the boil a little bit in the last couple of games, but that's not to say that he's not had a good start to the season, because he has. And he's really taken to Boro quite well, I'd say. And again, another upgrade on a player that we've moved on.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a comment in on YouTube. I believe this is about Sporar, probably the best striker we've had at the club since Bamford. Something that you suggested there, Dana, which is, I mean, is it something you agree with there? Is he someone that you could see being as good as Bamford at Boro?
I mean, it's early days, isn't it? We've had 2 games, 3 in total, I think, for him. He started twice, but I mean, he has all the attributes to be a success like Bamford was. It's just all about that movement, really, and I think that's exciting. The fact that we've got somebody that, like, typically over the years, we've had strikers that want to pin the centre halves rather than sort of use their pace to get them behind them. And Sporar offers that. I was looking into his games at Sporting and at Slovan Bratislava before that, and it's always been part of his game. So it's not a tactical thing from managers, it's just part of his play, which is really exciting. As I mentioned, though, we just need to give him that service.
Yeah, for sure. Just going back to Matt Crooks, I mean, he's relatively versatile as well, because there were times at Rotherham where he played a little bit more advanced, a bit further up than the number 10, and he has played out wide a couple of times as well during his time at Rotherham. Is that again another kind of string to his bow for Crooks at Boro? Is he someone that you see is he an essential cog in that 11 now?
Yeah, he's probably going to play right back against Reading because we've got no options there. But I think he's versatile, isn't he? He's a jack of all trades, but he's definitely someone that should be in those advanced areas of the pitch. I think we have played him as a striker earlier on in the season when we didn't have Sporar to call upon from the bench. But yeah, his versatility is really vital for us, especially given our lack of squad depth, which I still don't think we've rectified the issue with squad depth. I still don't think we've got a lot of options there, especially with the injuries that we seem to be picking up. but his versatility is really important for us. But as I mentioned, I would prefer seeing him in the position that he's played this season, in that sort of number 10 role, just off the striker.
Yeah, for sure. Let's touch next on what was arguably Boro's blockbuster signing of the summer. Martin Payero. He's not featured much though for Boro in his early time at the Riverside. He's made one League Cup appearance and a couple of substitute appearances in the Championship. 23-year-old attacking midfielder that came from Argentina. I mean, I'd never heard of him when I first saw the links emerge. I'd never heard of the player. Go on YouTube as you do, and some really nice YouTube highlights reels has got to be said. I mean, I can't really ask you what have you made of Payero so far because you haven't really seen enough of him. But I guess are you excited about what he could potentially bring to Boro in the future?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he's a ball carrying number 8, which I don't really think that we have had. I think if you look at his dribbling statistics from when he was in the Premier Division, fantastic. I think that by far the best in the league in terms of dribbles per game and progressive runs per game and all that sort of stuff. And it's intriguing because, as you mentioned there, nobody had really heard of him unless you're a footballing hipster, shall we say, and watch Argentinian football. But when that link came out, there were so many people that watch Argentinian football sort of baffled that Boro had picked him up, and more specifically that Neil Warnock had picked him up. Now, I don't think that he's a Neil Warnock signing. I think he's definitely a signing with another manager, a more progressive manager in mind. But it's exciting. And to be fair, he came on against Blackpool the other day, and he was probably one of our best players. He had a shot that hit the underside of the crossbar, and it was a fantastic technique on the shot, I have to say. And that's just a glimpse of what he can offer. And it's been a bit frustrating from Boro fans because we're so desperate to see him. And he got injured. He picked up an ankle injury in training just before the Coventry game, in which I think Neil Warnock said he was going to play. And we've just been really impatient, I think, wanting him to play and wanting to see what he can offer us. But it is interesting now, actually, because we've got 2 ball-playing midfielders in both him and James Leigh-Saliki. So when I was doing my sort of Middlesbrough 11 on a blog post the other day, I was thinking, have them 2 in midfield. But then I remembered that Neil Warnock's the manager, and it probably goes against everything that he believes in football.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose when it comes to Boro and South American midfielders, there's quite a good connection there. Obviously, Juninho, going back a few years, was a real success at the Riverside. So you'd hope to have similar with Payero moving forward. Right, let's touch on one of your young stars coming through this season. We've seen Isaiah Jones start a handful of games this term. Really exciting young 22-year-old winger, signed back in 2019 from Tooting and Mitcham, I believe. He's looked really promising in little glimmers this season, hasn't he? Very direct with his running. He's not afraid to attack opposition defences. Very good dribbling ability. Dana, is he someone you're excited about, and are Boro fans excited about Jones's potential progression at the Riverside?
Yeah, definitely. He's been probably our most exciting player so far this season. As you mentioned, very direct, but also adds variety to his game. He could go around the outside, he could cut inside. And his end product is pretty decent for somebody that I think has only had 2 loan spells before. This has never played in the Championship before. And he's probably been one of the breakout stars so far this season. Really disappointing, actually, not to see him play against Blackpool because Onel Hernandez has come in. And to be fair, I was expecting him to be dropped. I think Neil Warnock has sort of spoken about Jones and said that if he didn't have the options, then he probably would be out on loan right now. So I think everything happens for a reason, doesn't it? And it's been fantastic to see Isaiah Jones really take his opportunity. He's just so exciting with the ball at his feet. He's very non-league, and I mean that in the best possible way, of just getting around your man, trying to beat him. Very soccer AM school, as I've described him before in the past. And he's had a really good start to the season. I really hope to see him play tomorrow against Reading because he's an outlet for us. He's probably one of the main men in terms of Boro going forward.
Yeah, I suppose he's a little bit of an unknown quantity for a lot of opposition, because I can't imagine there's that much video footage of Isaiah Jones over the last few seasons. So I don't think many opposition teams have much to kind of analyse. So, he has got a very kind of somewhat unorthodox approach to his play, which can catch oppositions out. Let's touch on Neil Warnock next. So it looks like he's going to be his final season in management, but we've heard that before. So we'll wait and see. But that's what he's come out and said. I mean, Dana, what are your thoughts of Neil Warnock as your manager? Are you content with him? Are you happy with his style of football at Boro? I mean, yeah, what are your thoughts?
Well, this is the interesting part. I mean, when he was announced to have signed 1-year contracts last season, I was fine with it. I actually wanted a longer contract just for stability. But the way that he plays and the direct style and the sort of big on moments in games and second balls, I feel like it has a very short shelf life with fans, and that eventually, if you are going for promotion, if you're not getting the results, then the style of play becomes incredibly grating almost. And I think there's definitely been frustrations bubbling under the surface from last season. I mean, bowing out with a 3-0 defeat against Wickham at home. Appreciate there were no fans at the Riverside there, but it's probably a good thing that there wasn't. That's not great. And we've picked up really from where we've left off. So the poor start that we've had this season, I think that frustration has really reared its head. And I can't really give you a general consensus on what the fan opinion is on Neil Warnock, because for as much as there's been frustrations that have been aired and projected online, there's still a lot of people that are very much in the category of, well, it's early days. But there's definitely been questions over Neil Warnock recently, and his position has become under threat, at least from fans. Now, I go back to what I mentioned there about the fans saying that it's only early days, but Boro's form over 2021 has been poor. 33 games, 11 victories. I think it's 1.21 points per game, which is it's just not good enough. So this isn't really been an 8-game problem. It's been a 2021 problem.
For sure. Middlesbrough fans, if you are watching this show, let us know your thoughts on Neil Warnock. Are you happy with him as manager of your club? Dana, let's just touch on formations briefly. We've seen him often utilise a 4-2-3-1 formation more often than not this season. He's also dabbled with a 3-5-2 and a 4-1-4-1. I believe he played once as well. I mean, what's your kind of preference in terms of formation? What do you think gets the best out of the current crop of players in terms of the tactics and formation?
I would say 4-3-3. Last season, 3 at the back worked for us. I think statistically it was our most successful formation in terms of wins. But I mean, last season we didn't really have the wide players to play a 4-3-3 and to really harness that success in that formation. So moving on to this season, I think 4-3-3 is probably the best one for us, with like Howson as that sitting mid, and then two more progressive midfielders there. And I don't know, I'd love to see Martin Payero and James Lesaliki play together. I doubt that that's going to happen anytime soon, but you never know. But I mean, we have the wide options now with Jones, Hernandez, Tav. We do have Amiobi, but he's injured. So we've got the wide options now to be able to play 4-3-3. So I'd probably say 4-3-3 is the best formation for us going forward.
Nice one. There we go. Right, let's touch on tomorrow's game next. Boro travel to the Select Car Leasing Stadium on Saturday to face Reading in the 12:30 kickoff live on Sky Sports. Reading coming into this game off the back of 2 victories, albeit there is a potential 9-point deduction looming over their heads due to financial breaches. Right, let's talk about the matters on the pitch. Dana, are you feeling confident ahead of this one?
Not really, because we're going into it bad form and we're also live on Sky, so that should be fun. But no, I mean, Reading, it's the John Swift show over there, isn't it? And I think when you've got a player of his calibre, I mentioned earlier about us being easy to beat and essentially us being easy to create chances against. I think he'll be licking his lips at the game, to be honest. I saw that they're the most potent, or one of the most potent attacks in the league, but they've got the leakiest defence. Now, obviously, that presents an opportunity for Boro, but can we break them down? That's the problem. And can we remain somewhat firm at the back? I mean, we've got problems at right back. I think Lee Peltier is going to play there, so there's the sort of pace problem there. I think it's easy to get down the sides of Dale Fry and Grant Hall because of their lack of pace. So there's just holes all over the defence. There's holes in the midfield with an attack as effective as Reading's. I'm not particularly confident about this game, I must admit.
It is also worth noting that Reading do come into this game with no fit centre backs, so that could play into Boro's hands there.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised with that if we just didn't score against them. To be honest, I think all the arrows are pointing towards a Boro win, but I don't know. It would be typical Boro for Reading to have no senior centre backs and then for us to lose.
Yeah, there we go. Right, Dana, let's get your score prediction for this one then.
Well, with everything that I just mentioned there about good attack versus a leaky, porous defence, I won't be surprised if it's a 0-0, but I'm actually going for... I've changed my opinion a little bit. I'm going for a score draw. I'm going to say 1-1.
1-0. There we go. Right. Well, that concludes this episode of the Middlesbrough Fan Takeover Show. Dana, thanks so much for joining me this afternoon. I really enjoyed that. If you haven't checked out the Boro Breakdown podcast, please do. The guys are doing a cracking job over there chatting all things Boro. Well worth a follow on Twitter and a listen on all the different podcast platforms that are out there. Dana, thanks once again for joining me and all the viewers for joining us this afternoon, and we will see you soon.